Have you ever noticed how some days glide by with ease? Your mind feels sharp, emotions steady, and creative energy streams without resistance. Yet, on other days, despite your intentions, everything feels sluggish and out of sync. This contrast isn't random. It has roots in science, especially quantum physics and neurobiology. Once you grasp these dynamics, your relationship with your own energy shifts entirely. High vibration isn't just a passing feeling or something forced through sheer will. It's a precise, observable, and measurable state of your biofield, arising when mind, body, and emotions move in harmony. And it's not reserved for monks or mystics in distant sanctuaries. You can access it right here, right now. Once you learn how to sense and cultivate it, most people, however, live caught in cycles of reaction and resistance. They wake up weighed down by yesterday's stress, repeating the same thoughts that trigger the same emotions, which then fuel identical biochemical responses in the body. From a quantum perspective, this is more than a habit. It's a frequency loop. Your energy field constantly broadcasts like a radio signal, interacting with the larger quantum field and influencing what you perceive, how you feel, and the reality you step into. This process isn't about suppressing your emotions or faking joy. It's about fostering coherent lining thought patterns, heart rhythms, and nervous system responses into a unified flow. Imagine tuning your inner instruments so they produce a steady, resonant signal. When clarity takes shape within the quantum field, mirrors it back through synchronicities that feel too precise to be mere coincidence. You become an anchored observer, free from scattered desires or conflicting beliefs. Pause for a moment. Simply notice your energy. Don't rush to change it, just observe. Is there lightness in your body or subtle tightness in your chest? Are certain thoughts circling in the background? This small act of awareness already begins the shift, breaking the loops that keep your frequency tethered to old timelines. It opens a channel for a new, coherent signal that the quantum field can resonate with and reflect. Here's a fresh angle. Your vibration rarely collapses suddenly. Instead, it fades through tiny, almost invisible choices, reacting instead of pausing, holding your breath instead of releasing it, replaying stories rather than witnessing them neutrally. Recognizing this gives you power, because the same way frequency diminishes in unnoticed moments, it can also reignite in small sparks of awareness. These micro moments of presence rebuild your energetic signature step by step. Neurocardiology research uncovers something striking. Your heart generates an electromagnetic field far stronger than your brain's. When your heart rhythms flow smoothly in sync with breath, you broadcast an elevated, structured frequency around your body. This isn't poetic exaggeration, it's measurable. Even short periods of coherence influence your body chemistry, calm the nervous system, and reshape how the brain processes reality. Your perception expands, grows less reactive, and opens to deeper insight. Why does this matter? Because the quantum field responds not just to thoughts or words, but to the totality of your energetic broadcast. You might repeat affirmations about joy or abundance, but if your body resonates with tension or scarcity, the message is dissonant. In quantum terms, incoherence produces unpredictable, chaotic results, often the very things you try to avoid. This is why staying positive often feels exhausting. The body's energy contradicts the mind's intention. What you'll uncover here is how to end that conflict, not by forcing happiness or silencing real emotions, but by continually returning to harmony. This isn't about perfection. It's a practice of awareness. Each time you notice imbalance and gently guide yourself back, you strengthen coherence. Over time, magnetism and calm, chances are they've mastered this coherence. They don't just think intentionally, they embody a different vibrational state. Since the quantum field responds to your whole presence, thoughts, emotions, focus, your frequency becomes the most potent lever you can consciously shift. In the next stage of this journey, we'll explore how to condition your nervous system for higher resonance, how a few mindful minutes each morning can set your energy tone, and how to recognize the subtle signs of stepping into coherence. By the end, you won't just understand the theory, you'll feel what it means to witness your own vibration steadily, calmly, and clearly. And that state, more than any routine or affirmation, is what realigns your life with its highest potential. If you're still reading, part of you already senses that vibration is more than a passing mood. It's the invisible language through which your body engages with the quantum field. This isn't abstract philosophy, it's science. Let's begin with a principle often overlooked. Every experience exists as probability until your awareness locks it into reality. In quantum physics, this is the collapse of the wave function. Until focus engages a specific potential, it remains an open possibility. Your observation, combined with the emotional charge you carry, selects one outcome and stabilizes it as lived experience. This isn't metaphor. It's a measurable interaction between consciousness and the quantum framework of space-time. Neuroscience adds another layer. Your brain constantly constructs a model of reality, shaped by memory, habit, and expectation. What you perceive isn't unfiltered truth, it's a controlled projection. But here's the crucial part. These signals don't arise solely from thought. They emerge from the heart, breath, posture, and the electromagnetic field surrounding you. This explains why simply thinking differently, without addressing the body's state, rarely transforms anything. Picture your vibration as a transmission tower. Each thought emits frequency, each emotion adds complexity, and every choice either strengthens or distorts the coherence of your signal. When all components synchronize, you radiate a clear, powerful broadcast. In turn, the quantum field organizes itself in response, itself to mirror that inner harmony, taking form as what we call synchronicities. That's why you might suddenly cross paths with the right person, receive an unexpected but perfectly timed opportunity, or feel nudged toward an action you would have overlooked in a lower express vibrational state. Here's the catch. Most people, unknowingly, interrupt this natural flow. They think raising vibration means forcing affirmations or suppressing uncomfortable emotions. But this actually creates dissonance, a gap between what you're saying and what your body is experiencing. You might affirm, "I am abundant." Yet, if your nervous system is still wired for survival and fear, the quantum field receives a jumbled signal. That energetic contradiction scatters focus and interferes with collapsing the wave into your chosen reality. The clearest way to understand this is through coherence. Research into the heart's electromagnetic field shows that elevated states, gratitude, love, peace generate smooth, flowing waveforms. These patterns reveal harmony between heart and brain, guiding the nervous system into balance. In contrast, stress, worry, or irritation create jagged, erratic rhythms that signal incoherence and inner discord, disrupting how you think, feel, and broadcast energy. This misalignment doesn't just affect your emotions, it muddies the vibrational message you're transmitting into the field. In this session, you'll learn to notice those subtle shifts. You'll realize sustaining a high frequency isn't about forcing cheerfulness, but about recognizing when coherence slips and gently bringing yourself back. Think of it like tuning an instrument. The first step is hearing when you're out of tune. Only then can you adjust your internal frequency. So how do you put this into practice? The next time you catch yourself tightening, whether from job stress, conflict, or a wave of self-doubt, pause. Bring awareness to your heart center. Slow your breath. Watch the narrative your mind is spinning and ask, is this the vibration I want to project into the field? That moment of mindfulness gives you choice. Each time you choose coherence over reactivity, you strengthen your ability to hold a stable, elevated frequency, regardless of what's happening externally. Let's be clear, this isn't about denying discomfort or pretending life is easy. High vibration doesn't mean detaching from reality. It means staying grounded in trust while navigating complexity. It's the understanding that while you can't control every event, you absolutely can control the energetic signal you send back. If this feels new, or if it stirs something deeper than logic, I invite you to continue. Because by the end of this journey, you won't just pick up tools for temporary elevation. You'll understand how to create a lasting, energetic pattern that becomes your natural baseline. And if you're already sensing a small shift inside, inner nudge, a feeling of remembering something vital that quiet awareness signals, your system is aligning and your field is already stabilizing. One of the most underestimated factors in maintaining high vibration is how you start your morning. In those first minutes after waking, your brain moves from theta into beta waves. During this transition, your subconscious remains open and stress circuits haven't fully activated. This short window is a prime chance to set the energetic tone of your day. Yet, most people jump into reactivity, checking emails, scrolling news, replaying yesterday's worries, without realizing Arthur Schopenhauer's declaration that the world is a representation meant that what we call reality is always filtered through the mind. We never experience the world directly, but only our version of it, processed by perception. Inspired by Kant, Schopenhauer pushed further, claiming that behind every appearance, behind color, form, and sound, lies something deeper, the will. For him, the will is a blind, ceaseless force driving all existence. It fuels desire, striving, action, and often suffering. Life, then, has two sides: the world as representation, our subjective rendering of reality, and the will, the unconscious force pushing us endlessly forward. Because desire never rests, suffering becomes inevitable. Yet, Schopenhauer saw possible relief in art, especially music, or in deep contemplation. We can briefly step outside the tyranny of the will, escaping, craving, and finding peace. In short, he reminds us that reality is not simply out there, it is shaped from within. How we see the world reveals as much about us as it does about what exists. And in recognizing this, we may suffer less and live with greater awareness. Michel Foucault disrupted one of the West's most comfortable assumptions, that truth is timeless, objective, and absolute. For Foucault, truth is not discovered, but constructed, born of language, history, and power. When he insists truth is a product of discourse, he means that what counts as truth in any society depends on the vocabulary we use, the rules we follow, and the institutions that enforce one narrative while silencing others. Truth, then, is never neutral. It is tied to authority. Every era, he argued, has its own regime of truth, dominant systems of thought that prevail not by accuracy but by legitimacy granted from science, religion, law, or media. Language doesn't simply describe, it shapes what we notice, what we believe is possible. This isn't to say all claims are equal, but it forces us to ask, who gains from this version of truth? Who is excluded? Which voices vanish? For Foucault, truth production is bound up with power. By recognizing this, we equip ourselves to resist manipulation and carve out space for silenced perspectives. His call is ultimately one of responsibility. If truth is made, not found, then each of us participates in shaping the world through the stories we uphold, the beliefs we adopt, and the questions we dare to ask. Foucault also rejected the notion that morality springs from pure reason or eternal laws. For him, what counts as moral in a society is inseparable from the power networks that govern it. Morality does not emerge from some universal human heart, but from the operations of power inscribed in institutions, language, even our bodies. Power is not only centralized in kings or governments, but woven into daily life, in schools, prisons, hospitals, and vocabularies. As a result, morality is fluid, varying with cultural context and authority. What is praised in one era or culture may be condemned in another. Morality, then, often serves not universal justice but the maintenance of power, keeping some groups dominant while marginalizing others. Foucault's aim was not to declare what is right or wrong, but to expose how such judgments are constructed. By questioning the origins and functions of moral codes, we can see who benefits, who loses, and why. His philosophy urges vigilance, to never accept morality as given, but to trace its roots in power and decide for ourselves how to live. Foucault pushes us to ask, who is truly pulling the strings? At the very beginning of the Communist Manifesto, Marx and Engels offer a strikingly poetic line, "All that is solid melts into air." They weren't just describing uncertainty, they were capturing the restless, unstable rhythm of capitalism. Under this system, nothing remains untouched, no custom is sacred. Everything is consumed, reshaped, and eventually discarded. Traditions, family bonds, even religious values lose their weight. What ultimately takes precedence is profit, expansion, and innovation. Human ties turn into contracts, numbers, and financial exchanges. The past loses its anchor, and the future feels like building on shifting sand. This constant transformation brings incredible advances in technology, yes, but also sharp inequality. Modern life promises infinite opportunities, yet often leaves us with anxiety, isolation, and rootlessness. What once felt firm becomes fleeting. Even our sense of identity can slip through our hands. But Marx and Engels weren't only lamenting. They also saw in this turbulence a spark of possibility. If everything can be dismantled, then it can also be rebuilt. The recognition that nothing is permanent means change is always possible. A world where people matter more than profits, where humanity not capital is placed at the center. For Marx, history is not simply a list of rulers, wars, or discoveries. It's a story of struggle. At its core lies the conflict between those who hold power and those who don't, between the owners of production and those with only their labor to sell. This reshapes how we understand the past. Economic systems, Marx argued, mold our governments, values, and even our sense of morality. The transition from feudalism to capitalism, for instance, wasn't just about politics or technology. It was about shifting power and restructuring society itself. Conflict, for Marx, isn't an accident. It's the engine of history. Landowners against peasants, bosses against workers, elites against the masses. Each era's defining break comes from these tensions boiling over. This perspective compels us to question inequality, exploitation, and privilege. They're not natural, not inevitable. They're built by human systems, and therefore they can be dismantled. Class struggle isn't merely theory, it's a call. Once people grasp the forces shaping their lives, they can organize, resist, and create something new. History, in this view, isn't something we read, it's something we forge. In the 17th century, Baruch Spinoza shook traditional thinking about freedom. He argued that free will, the belief that we choose independently of outside influences, is an illusion. People think they are free simply because they don't see the causes driving them. Our decisions don't appear out of nowhere. They're shaped by desire, biology, environment, and the unbreakable laws of nature. Just as a rock doesn't choose to fall, our choices are links in a chain of cause and effect. At first, this might feel bleak, like we're passengers in our own lives. But Spinoza offered a different vision: freedom through understanding. True freedom isn't doing whatever we wish, it's becoming aware of why we think, feel, and act the way we do. With that awareness, we stop being pulled blindly by emotion or circumstance. For Spinoza, wisdom lies in knowledge, and that kind of freedom, rooted in clarity rather than illusion, is deeper and more lasting than the fantasy of total control. Friedrich Nietzsche delighted in overturning what seemed certain when he said, "There are no facts, only interpretations." He wasn't denying reality's existence. He was questioning how we grasp it. For Nietzsche, nothing reaches us in pure form. Everything we accept as truth is filtered through perspective. The words we use, the culture we belong to, our experiences and desires. What one calls a fact, another may see completely differently. Think of history, science, morality. What becomes accepted truth is often just the version powerful enough to dominate. Nietzsche wasn't claiming that truth doesn't matter. He was warning us to be wary. Behind every fact often hides a worldview, a power structure, or an agenda. Instead of chasing an absolute truth, he urged us to create meaning, to interpret boldly, affirm life, and claim perspectives as our own. The point is crucial. If everything is interpretation, then we hold responsibility. Our interpretations shape how we live and the worlds we build. Thinking, then, isn't just intellectual, it's ethical. In the Republic, Plato offers a radical design for a just society. The state should govern every sphere of public and even private life. Yet he wasn't just advocating authoritarianism. His aim was harmony, a city where each individual filled the role that best fit their nature. For Plato, individuals aren't self-sufficient. True justice, the balance within the soul, can only flourish in a carefully ordered polis, ruled by philosopher kings whose wisdom steers the whole. That's why individual liberty wasn't his highest principle. What mattered was the collective good secured through discipline, education, and moral guidance. His blueprint includes measures shocking to modern readers: censorship of myths, regulation of marriage, even the abolition of private property among guardians. To Plato, only by shaping citizens from birth could society prevent chaos born from ignorance and unchecked desire. What appears harsh to us was, for him, the hope of a rational, utopian, orderly city where soul and society move in sync. Alexis de Tocqueville, observing early American democracy, saw another paradox. Rule by the people could itself suppress the individual. His phrase, tyranny of the majority, didn't mean dictatorship, but the silent force of public opinion. In democracies, laws reflect majority will, but what happens to minority voices or to those who dare dissent? Tocqueville noted that social conformity can suffocate freedom of thought. The more uniform society grows, the greater the pressure to fit in. Majority values enforce themselves, not only through legislation, but through moral judgment, exclusion, and subtle shaming. This tyranny isn't loud, it's internal. Fear of standing apart silences even courageous minds. For Tocqueville, democracy's true test isn't just elections, it's pluralism, the protection of difference. His warning echoes today in the age of social media, where mass opinion travels instantly. Enforcing conformity through online shaming and cancel culture. Democracy, he reminds us, isn't sameness. It survives only when it safeguards every individual's right to dissent, to remain proudly in the minority and in the second sex. Simone de Beauvoir launched one of feminism's boldest insights: woman is the other. With this, she exposed how patriarchal culture cast masculinity as the norm for centuries. Men were seen as the standard of humanity, while women were cast into the role of the other, secondary, different, complementary. Women weren't just pushed out of politics and public life, they were defined entirely through the male gaze, not as subjects, but as objects, not as voices, but as those spoken about. Female identity was molded by myths, ideologies, and expectations that confined women in stories of fragility, dependency, and emotion. De Beauvoir shows this exclusion is not natural. There is no inborn essence that makes women weaker or submissive. It's a cultural, symbolic, and social construct. The other isn't destiny, it's a position shaped by power. Her point is clear. The problem isn't personal, it's structural. It's not about kindness or small gestures. It's about rethinking our entire notion of humanity, so there is no center that defines while another obeys. When she says, one is not born, but rather becomes a woman, Beauvoir insists that gender is built, not given. True liberation means each woman must see herself as the subject of her own life, not as a mirror for others, but as a full presence in the world. But such freedom isn't a gift, it's a burden. We are not born with a script, a destiny, or an essence. From the moment of birth, every choice, every action, every silence shapes who we are. That's what Sartre means when he declares, man is condemned to be free. The word condemned is no exaggeration. He wants to highlight the crushing weight of radical freedom. There is no escape. Even refusing to choose is itself a choice. Even obeying rules is something we decide to do, which means we live under a constant weight of responsibility. We cannot hide behind religion, the state, tradition, or biology. Those are excuses to avoid the anxiety of choosing for ourselves. Sartre's claim is stark. There's no outsourcing existence. We are the sole authors of our lives. That is both terrifying and liberating. Freedom, then, is not about doing whatever we like, it's about owning our actions, knowing they define not only who we are, but also the kind of world we shape. Every decision is a wager on what it means to be human, and that gives freedom a profound ethical depth. To live free is to live without guarantees, but also to embrace the chance to create meaning, to become. In a world full of absurdity, Sartre reminds us, freedom is our only certainty, and the heaviest one to carry. Bertrand Russell, one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century, did not view God as a divine truth, but as a human invention. When he said, God is a concept invented by humans, he wasn't mocking faith, he was analyzing its roots in psychology, society, and history. For Russell, the image of God emerged as humanity's response to fear, uncertainty, and the desire for order in a chaotic world. In ancient times, unexplained natural events were attributed to gods, a way to make sense of mystery. Over centuries, those stories grew into moral and metaphysical systems. But as science advanced, Russell argued, we no longer needed supernatural explanations. God, in his view, was not an external being, but a creation of human imagination. Yet, the concept still carried weight. It unified societies, shaped moral codes, and gave comfort in suffering. Still, Russell believed life could be meaningful without God. Ethics, purpose, and beauty can stand on their own. His critique is a call for maturity. Letting go of God is not denial, but responsibility. It's acknowledging that meaning is not given, we must create it, here and now. Francois de la Rochefoucauld, master of sharp maxims in the 17th century, offered a brutally honest take on love. For him, what we call pure love is often just a refined form of selfishness. He didn't deny the feeling itself, he wanted to uncover what lies beneath: the desire to possess, to be validated, to satisfy our own needs. Even in the most tender relationships, he argued, there is vanity. We love partly because the other makes us feel better about ourselves. We even love the idea of being loved. Even our selfless gestures, he said, often hide a need for recognition or control. But this view isn't meant as cynicism, it's a mirror. By showing us that love is not as pure as we'd like to imagine, he invites us to reflect on our motives. Love becomes less about sacrifice and more about the dance of subtle interests, many unconscious. And does that ruin its beauty? Not at all. In fact, La Rochefoucauld's honesty makes love more human, not an ideal of perfection, but two flawed beings choosing, despite everything, to share a world. For Foucault, the idea of a fixed, universal human nature is not only false, but dangerous. Defining humanity in rigid terms always defines who is excluded. Such definitions carry political consequences. They justify punishment, exclusion, and normalization. Foucault shifts the question into history, showing that what we call natural changes constantly. Madness, crime, sexuality, even childhood, these have been defined differently in every age, which means being human isn't about some eternal essence, but about shifting practices and discourses. That thought is liberating and unsettling. If there is no fixed essence, then there is no final truth about what we should be. Identity becomes open-ended, fluid, in constant reinvention. That makes us responsible for shaping ourselves. By rejecting essentialism, Foucault makes diversity visible, not as deviation, but as power. Ethics stop being about fitting into a mold and start becoming about creativity. Humanity is not a formulite, is the endless exploration of possibility. Jean Baudrillard wasn't talking about computers when he said we live in a simulation. He meant something more haunting. In our media-saturated world, reality itself is replaced by its representations. What we experience are not realities, but signs, symbols, and images. He called this hyperreality, a stage where copies don't just imitate the real, they replace it. Advertisements, influencers, social media profiles all create polished versions of reality that soon feel more real than the truth. But the question cuts deeper. If everything is representation, then where is reality? Where is truth? Baudrillard warns that the boundary between the real and the staged is dissolving. We live in a theater of appearances, where even politics and culture become spectacle. His point isn't to surrender, but to wake up, to notice how images, brands, and narratives shape our world. Because when we lose sight of reality, the only way back may be through presence, through fewer illusions and more authenticity. Heraclitus, the enigmatic pre-Socratic, saw existence as a battlefield. When he said, "War is the mother of all things," he wasn't glorifying bloodshed, but pointing to conflict as the force that drives reality. War, for him, symbolized the struggle between opposites, light and dark, life and death, chaos and order. It is this tension that creates movement, change, and birth. Nothing comes from pure stillness. Stability is an illusion. Reality, at its core, is flux. Even the cosmos, which looks harmonious, exists only because opposing forces are in balance. Peace, in this vision, is never the absence of conflicted, is the fragile harmony born from struggle. Applied to human life, the lesson is sharp. Growth, whether personal or social, comes only through challenge. Struggle is not an accident, but the very condition of becoming. There's no growth without asking questions, no maturity without disruption. And as unsettling as that sounds, it's in moments of crisis that transformation takes place. Heraclitus isn't celebrating destruction. He's pointing out that life advances through unrest. War is the mother of all things isn't about bloodshed, but about movement, the force that drives us beyond comfort. This line, among the most poetic in all of philosophy, carries a deep truth. When Heraclitus declares everything flows ponterai, he reminds us that nothing is fixed. Reality is constant change. The world isn't a still object, but a flowing river. You can't step into the same river twice, he said, because both the waters have shifted, and so have you. This striking metaphor reveals that time never stops, that existence is woven out of change, and permanence is nothing but an illusion. Seen this way, life challenges us to live with awareness. Our attachments, certainties, and identities, everything is temporary. To cling to absolute truths is to resist the natural current of existence. Heraclitus urges the opposite: embrace becoming, live in tune with impermanence. This doesn't mean surrender, it means clarity. Those who grasp the inevitability of change grow lighter, more grounded, and freer to reshape themselves and the world. Time, in this light, is not an enemy, but the stage upon which everything unfolds.